So there's a term that gets overused, which is the Internet of Things. But for me, it's a very important moment where buildings are getting very intelligent about people inside them and how they move and where they are, and the fact that everyone's now carrying a device that localizes them in space. The environment is becoming more active and actually changing the way we move around. It's much smarter. And architects are the ones who are really responsible for the civic realm, like how people socialize and how they experience a city. I think software companies like Facebook, when they say they're social media, it's really not about that civic part of things. And I think architects need to focus on that. So the last 2, maybe 3 years, I would say my focus personally has shifted entirely on this new type of civic space and how people interact in buildings which are intelligent. And I'm trying to get out front of that because I see a lot of questions not being asked right now. And I think only architects would ask questions about the civic realm. So that's really what I'm most interested in. I know that I'm known more for digital form making and digital fabrication. And I really feel like there's a big jump that we're making in my office now, and also in my teaching, to focus more on this question of internet technology and civic space. So the last few years, I've been doing a lot with moving rooms and moving furniture and building elements that can turn and change and roll. And in a certain way, architecture was becoming a robot already. And I thought, why not look at a little piece of furniture which can actually go in and out of the building and become a vehicle. So that kind of mobilier element for me is very interesting, and it really starts to be something between an appliance or a piece of furniture and a bicycle or a skateboard. And that's really something that's exciting to me because it changes the way I'm thinking about buildings, but it also extends some of the things you associate with furniture and appliances out into the city. Well, yesterday I had a sensation I've never had before, not with my own projection either, but with some of the other ones. At a certain point, I wasn't sure if I was looking at a building or a digital image. And that quality was very exciting. After watching a certain approach to rendering the building and projecting that rendering on the building, it became a very odd sensation where I wasn't sure if I was looking at something virtual or something physical. And that's an effect I've seen before wearing a HoloLens. It's a thing I've had before looking at a projection on a model. I've never seen it on something as big as a building in the city. And it was very unique, very new for me to see that at that scale.
Yeah, and I guess I joined projects as a collaborator. I do sort of simulations based on almost exploring creating form and structure through growth. So really quite experimental material. And I've been talking with people at Zaha for quite a while about potential collaboration projects. So what's really interesting, this was the first real project where, okay, let's actually do a collaboration. Okay. And also, I guess we were also all new to projection mapping. So it was actually a really interesting opportunity and experiment, I think, for all of us. Both, let's work together and let's work with basically what's a new medium. I think we've all got experience in 3D and working with animation or working with structure and form with architecture. Yeah. But this is you doing it for something different. That's a really interesting experience.
Yeah. I think the confluence, the digitization in all media is also bringing, I think, artists and different processes, different aspects of art and architecture together in a very unique way, and I think in a very close way, working on all these different software platforms and creating the base structure of what we had in mind artistically. And I think the fusion that we try to achieve as an overall concept was us as architects obviously exploiting the technology, the digital process for ourselves, and also tying it into our research that is happening in code, in clear relation to the architectural design process. Whereas you, Andy, obviously you had your own agenda, and I think it was a really interesting fusion in a way, and I think the result was a very interesting one, I think, for all and everybody involved.
I think the one thing I sort of take from that is I think the whole way the project progressed, rather than it being just like, okay, here's the design, and then everyone else is just implementing. We're just vendors implementing the designs that come from Zaha. It was actually just doing a real genuine exploratory collaboration. What he's doing is creating rules for how people interact, how people's behaviours change, how do they behave in different spaces. And I guess I'm doing things where it's not trying to say here's a shape I want to create. It's saying here's rules of how things grow, what happens. And I'm just working with a different medium here. I was trying growing it in ways which are maybe more architectural, more things where flowing out horizontally.
This was almost the overarching sort of experiment that we arrive in, and of course in a very not superficial, but in a very sort of short, entertaining way, to some form of conclusion or synergy in a way. That was new and exciting. I think in the light mapping as a medium has two amazing qualities which are very unique. One is obviously the scale. You are in the center of a Baroque city. You have an amazing backdrop that ties back into the whole evolution of architectural space and its developments over the centuries almost. But then you have a live audience that is also completely unspecific in a way. It's the population of a town, and you have really raw concepts and ideas. I think when you build buildings and you see the evolution of a project, there's so much refinement and maturing happening, and we had 3 months to put this together, and I think that is also quite nice as a testing ground. I think one really nice and surprising aspect was that I saw obviously once we came here, and we actually had it combined in that space and context, that we purposefully decided to go monochrome white. We said, okay, we're newcomers, we don't want to overload our task load with looking at color and different aspects, but then the yellow was really quite nice how it merged with the white. It had a very subtle hue suddenly that we didn't really expect. I mean, we
also that sometimes you see it and sometimes you didn't. Sometimes it just looked like the building saying almost like a canvas. You don't notice that the stonework is so yellow compared with the buildings. And then other times you really do, and it's so quite interesting. Just like how this was like changing relationship with the building. So I guess one thing we're taking away from it is we're pleased, I think, how it works. But there always is the thing where until we actually came here, you're not actually really seeing it on the building. So you're doing all that work, and you're seeing sort of simulations of it, but you're not really there. You're not really in the space. And I think we're really happy about how it largely has worked. But there also are some things where it's almost like, now I've really seen it. How I'd like to have done that bit differently, or we could have played maybe more to almost like with almost the colour coming in, but maybe removing that, and how we work with the time and the black, and it's just a different medium. So it's actually, I think we've come away almost quite excited for what you could do next.
I think what I take away from being an architect and having a completed building experience. So I mean, this is also obviously quite a privilege. I think many architectural projects end up being in the drawer or being just sort of stalled or frozen. And when you have that static thing and that space that you can enter and experience, I think this is the equivalent, I think, to having the presentation after 3 months of work, and you sense there is a speciality to it. I mean, especially now with the castle forming that C shape, and you're really in a unique space. And it's funny how it kind of breaks down into a very dynamic thing that you can actually go back, being digital, that you could say we could refine it, we could change it. With buildings, it's a lot more expensive and very, very difficult once the client moves in. And you will have to
You
struggle.
can't come back in and say, "I'm sorry, Mr. Clark, we want to do this bit of the building again."
Yes, exactly. I'm not happy. This needs to be addressed.
That's what happened. Yeah.
And I think this is also what digital architecture really is. It is the canvas suddenly has a dimension to it, and the simulation of what you would have as a final experience becomes fluid, dynamic, and changeable. And this is almost a kind of a prototype, kind of let's say immersive solution where you could imagine adaptability in the actual architectural output.
Yeah, it has much more freedom to evolve, or you can have much more iterations of the same stuff. Way easier than when you have a static.
But I think Andy's point about having a cinema screen, which is the sort of neutral white box, effectively, which is the equivalent of the art space, the gallery space. This is a unique environment, and light mapping in that way is a medium that is always producing this unique. Of course, you have runs. I mean, it was 3 weeks now, until September. The projections will run, but this cannot be just simply moved to another location.
Absolutely.
So I think that's also quite nice as a quality.
But it's also, as we develop the piece, you realise something. If we did have a different location, maybe there's sort of half of what we had which would just work, but the other half would really need to be adapted. So it's actually, there's this flexible, fluid. It's almost like it's not just. It's not just everything responds to the architecture, but it's also not a blank space. It's you can work with it. It's interesting.
Very interesting.
It's given us a lot to think about.
We are not afraid of anything. Let's put it this way. I think our office has experimented with all kinds of media, so I think clearly we would not hesitate to do another light mapping project. Maybe, I mean, we thought about, and I think Filippo made that point when we were talking, that it could be really also implemented in our architectural work. So maybe not necessarily as a permanent feature, but maybe during special events. We are also obviously working on quite pragmatic aspects, but maybe they have a relationship. So we're looking at maybe automation systems, control systems that also could work with light, and not having hardware and necessarily static, non-adaptive system. So I think that really is a valuable experience and learning for us as architects. So we can draw, I think, quite a bit.
So I think there would be definitely a potential also to adapt certain methods also to other conditions. Of course, in that case, a blank space probably wouldn't be so much interesting because it doesn't have existing parameters. But it's still, I think, for the future.